Admiral Lee Jinho stood at the massive observation deck of Kepler Prime Station and watched ships from dozens of worlds dock at the enormous structure. The station hung in space like a metal flower with petals made of steel and glass, each section designed to house different alien species with their unique environmental needs. Some areas glowed with the soft blue light preferred by the crystalline beings, while others pulsed with the red energy that the thermal species required to survive. Lee had been coming to these council meetings for 3 years now, but the sight still amazed him. The humans had only joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago, when their first ships had stumbled across a patrol fleet from the Velthari Collective, near what Earth called the Proxima System. Those early days had been tense, with both sides uncertain about the other's intentions. The aliens had advanced technology that seemed like magic to the humans, while Earth's military tactics and ship designs puzzled the established galactic powers. What started as cautious contact had grown into full membership in the galactic community, but Lee knew that many species still viewed humanity with suspicion. He turned from the window as his aide, Captain Park Minji, approached with a datapad in her hands. Park had served under Lee for 8 years and commanded the flagship Soul's Pride when he wasn't aboard her. She was one of the finest officers Lee had ever worked with, and he trusted her judgment completely. Her dark eyes showed concern as she handed him the pad, and Lee felt his stomach tighten as he read the contents. "The Zephyrian delegation is pushing for restrictions on our fleet movements again," Park said quietly. "They claim our patrol patterns are too aggressive and make other species nervous." Lee scrolled through the formal complaint and shook his head. The Zephyrians were a warrior culture that had dominated their sector for thousands of years before humans arrived on the galactic stage. They had the largest military force in the Council and were used to other species deferring to their wishes. The fact that Earth refused to back down from their positions clearly frustrated them. "They're testing us," Lee said. "They want to see if we'll bend under political pressure." Ambassador Ko Dong-yun joined them at the window, wearing the formal diplomatic robes required for council sessions. Ko had been Earth's chief representative for 5 years and had proven skilled at navigating the complex politics of dozens of alien cultures. He was younger than Lee, but his calm demeanor and sharp intelligence had earned respect from even the most difficult species. "The session starts in 30 minutes, Ko said. "I've been talking with some of the neutral delegations, and there's definitely something planned. The Zephyrians have been meeting privately with several other military powers." Lee wasn't surprised. Ever since humanity had demonstrated their fleet capabilities during the border dispute with the Hive Raiders 2 years ago, there had been growing tension. The humans had ended that conflict in 6 days using tactics that no other species had seen before. Instead of the traditional formation battles that dominated galactic warfare, Earth's ships had fought like a pack of wolves, coordinating attacks across multiple star systems and striking at supply lines rather than engaging in direct combat. The 3 humans made their way through the station's corridors toward the main council chamber. They passed groups of aliens, from dozens of species, some walking on multiple legs while others floated in containment fields or rolled along on specialized mobility devices. The diversity never failed to impress Lee even after years of exposure. Earth's military had learned to work with all of these different beings, but it had required significant adaptation. The council chamber was a vast spherical room with seating, arranged in concentric circles around a central speaking area. Each delegation had sections designed for their specific needs with appropriate atmosphere, gravity, and lighting. The human section was positioned between the Crystalline Collective and the Thermal Union, 2 species that had become reliable allies over the years. High Arbiter Velthar called the session to order with a harmonic tone that resonated through the chamber's translation systems. The crystalline being stood nearly 3 meters tall with a body that seemed to be made of living diamond that caught and reflected light in beautiful patterns. As the senior member of the council, Velthar had guided galactic politics for over 2 centuries and commanded respect from all species. We gather today to address concerns about military protocols and fleet movements, Velthar announced. Several delegations have requested clarification about the operational parameters of various member fleets. War Marshal Krixtal rose from the Zephyrian section, his massive form covered in the ceremonial armor that his species wore for formal occasions. The Zephyrians were humanoid but larger and stronger than humans with thick gray skin and pronounced cranial ridges. Krixtal had led their military forces for decades and was known for his direct approach to problems. The Zephyrian hegemony requests formal restrictions on human fleet movements, Krixtal stated in a voice that carried easily through the chamber. Their ships operate with patterns that are unpredictable and potentially threatening to established trade routes and patrol areas. Lee felt his jaw tighten but kept his expression neutral. This was exactly the kind of challenge he had expected. The Zephyrians wanted to force humanity into the same rigid operational patterns that governed other species fleets. Those patterns made military movements predictable and limited tactical flexibility. Ambassador Ko stood to respond, and his voice remained calm, despite the provocation. Earth appreciates the hegemony's concerns, but our fleet operates under protocols that have proven effective in maintaining peace and security. We have no intention of restricting our operational flexibility. A ripple of tension passed through the chamber as other delegations realized this was becoming a direct confrontation between two of the Council's military powers. Fleet Commander Noxara of the Energy Collective leaned forward with interest. The ancient being appeared as a shifting pattern of light and energy contained within a specialized containment field and was rumored to be thousands of years old. Perhaps, Noxara said in a voice like distant thunder, the humans could explain their operational philosophy to address these concerns. Lee stood and walked to the central speaking area, feeling the attention of hundreds of alien beings focused on him. He had given this speech before, but never to the full council with tensions running this high. The next few minutes could determine whether humanity remained an equal member of the galactic community or became subordinate to the established powers. 50 years ago, humanity entered galactic society as newcomers, Lee began. We learned your technologies, your customs, and your ways of conducting business. But we also maintained our own approaches to the challenges we face. He paused and looked directly at the Zephyrian delegation. Our fleet operates under one simple principle. The protection of human lives and interests is our primary mission. We will not accept restrictions that compromise our ability to defend our people. War Marshal Krixtal's compound eyes glittered, with what might have been amusement. And if other species feel threatened by your unrestrained movements? Lee's expression hardened, and his voice took on the tone he used when addressing his officers before battle. Then they should remember that humans have never started a conflict with another council member, but we have finished everyone that was brought to us. The chamber fell silent as the implications of Lee's words sank in. He was essentially stating that humanity would not back down from any challenge and would use whatever force was necessary to protect their interests. It was a bold statement that could either deter future confrontations or provoke them. High Arbiter Velthar's crystalline form pulsed with shifting colors as the ancient being considered the situation. The Council recognizes that each member species has unique operational requirements based on their culture and capabilities. However, we must also ensure that military activities do not destabilize galactic peace. Fleet Commander Noxara spoke again, and there was something like approval in the energy being's shifting patterns. I have observed many species rise to prominence in this galaxy over the millennia. Those who survive learn to respect strength while avoiding unnecessary conflict. Perhaps a formal recognition of operational parameters would serve all interests. Ambassador Ko stepped forward, sensing an opportunity. Earth would support a formal accord that recognizes each species' right to defend their interests while maintaining council oversight of major military operations. The discussion that followed lasted for hours as delegations debated the specifics of what would become known as the Terran Naval Doctrine. Lee watched as various species positioned themselves either in support of or opposition to the proposal. The Crystalline Collective and Thermal Union backed Earth's position, while several smaller military powers sided with the Zephyrians. In the end, it was High Arbiter Velthar who proposed the final language that would shape galactic politics for years to come. Let it be recorded that the Council recognizes the sovereign right of member species to operate their military forces according to their cultural and strategic requirements. However, there shall be one inviolable principle: no member species shall interfere with board. Captain Kim Tae-hyun studied the star charts displayed on the main screen of his ship's bridge and frowned at what he saw. The Busan Guardian was 3 days into a routine patrol of the Vale Nebula region when long-range sensors had detected unusual ship movements near the border between Council space and the disputed territories. Kim had been commanding patrol vessels for 12 years and had learned to trust his instincts when something felt wrong. The Vale Nebula was a massive cloud of gas and cosmic dust that interfered with most sensor systems and provided perfect cover for smugglers, pirates, and anyone else who wanted to avoid detection. Earth Fleet maintained regular patrols through the region, both to protect shipping lanes and to gather intelligence on potential threats. It was boring work most of the time, but Kim knew how quickly things could change in the depths of space. Lieutenant Commander Choi Sunho looked up from his sensor station with concern written across his young face. Choi was one of the most promising officers Kim had worked with, and the captain had been grooming him for his own command. The young man had excellent tactical instincts and the kind of calm demeanor that served officers well during crisis situations. "Captain, I'm reading multiple hyperspace signatures about 6 light hours ahead," Choi reported. "The energy patterns match Zephyrian heavy cruisers, but they're operating in formation patterns I haven't seen before." Kim moved to the sensor station and studied the readings carefully. The Zephyrians had every right to operate in this region since it was technically neutral space, but their presence this close to established patrol routes was unusual. More concerning was the fact that they appeared to be maintaining communication silence, which suggested they were planning something they didn't want detected. "How many ships?" Kim asked. "At least 6, possibly more hiding in the nebula's interference," Choi replied. "They've been holding position for several hours." Chief Engineer Yoon Hyeri joined them from her position at the engineering console. Yoon was a genius with ship systems and had modified the Busan Guardian's engines and sensors far beyond standard specifications. Her unofficial improvements had saved Kim's crew more than once during their patrols, and he had learned to rely on her technical expertise. "The modifications I made to our sensor array should let us get a better reading if we move closer," Yoon suggested. "But if they're planning something, approaching might trigger whatever they have in mind." Kim considered his options carefully. Standing orders required him to investigate unusual military activity in his patrol sector, but the recent tensions with the Zephyrian hegemony made any encounter potentially dangerous. The Terran Naval Doctrine that had been established 2 years ago was supposed to prevent exactly this kind of situation, but Kim knew that some species were looking for ways to test Earth's resolve. "Set course for their position, but keep us at maximum sensor range," Kim ordered. "I want to know what they're doing before we get close enough for them to cause trouble." The Busan Guardian changed course and began moving toward the Zephyrian formation at a steady pace. Kim had his crew run diagnostics on all weapons and defensive systems while maintaining the appearance of a routine patrol. If the aliens were planning something, he wanted to be ready to respond quickly. As they closed the distance, the sensor readings became clearer and more disturbing. The Zephyrian ships were indeed heavy cruisers, each one capable of destroying Kim's patrol vessel in a direct fight. They were arranged in a formation that would allow them to surround and capture another ship rather than destroy it, which suggested their intentions were not immediately hostile. "Captain," Choi said quietly, "I think they're waiting for us." Kim felt his stomach tighten as he realized the young officer was probably correct. The Zephyrian position was perfectly placed to intercept any Earth patrol ship following the standard route through this sector. They had been lying in wait, probably for days, hoping to catch a human vessel alone and far from any backup. "All stop," Kim ordered. "Maintain position and continue scanning." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of electronic systems, as the crew waited to see what would happen next. Kim knew that he could turn around and leave the area, but that would be seen as backing down from a potential confrontation. On the other hand, continuing toward the Zephyrian formation might be exactly what they wanted him to do. The decision was taken out of his hands when 6 massive shapes dropped out of hyperspace around the Busan Guardian in a perfectly coordinated maneuver. The Zephyrian heavy cruisers formed a loose sphere around Kim's ship, with their weapons powered but not yet targeted. It was a classic intimidation tactic designed to force a surrender without actually opening fire. The main screen flickered as an incoming transmission cut through the normal communication frequencies. The image that appeared showed War Marshal Krixtal himself standing on the bridge of what was obviously the Zephyrian flagship. The alien's massive form was even more imposing when viewed directly, and his compound eyes glittered with satisfaction. "Human. Vessel, you are ordered to surrender for inspection," Krixtal announced in his deep voice. "Our intelligence indicates that your ship may be carrying contraband materials in violation of several galactic treaties." Kim kept his expression neutral, despite the anger building in his chest. The accusation was obviously false, since Earth. Fleet vessels never carried anything that could be considered contraband. This was clearly a pretext for boarding his ship and examining human technology, which would be a direct violation of the Terran naval doctrine. "This is Captain Kim Tae-hyun of the Earth Fleet vessel Busan Guardian," he replied calmly. "We are conducting a lawful patrol in neutral space and carry no contraband of any kind. You are ordered to withdraw from this area immediately." Krixtal's compound eyes seemed to brighten with amusement. "I'm afraid that's not acceptable, Captain. Our information comes from reliable sources, and we have a duty to investigate potential treaty violations. Prepare to be boarded." Kim felt his crew tense around him as the implications became clear. The Zephyrians were going to board his ship whether he cooperated or not, which meant they had already decided to violate the Council Accords. This was the test that everyone had been expecting since the doctrine was established. "War Marshal, you are in violation of the Terran naval doctrine as established by the Galactic Council 2 years ago," Kim stated formally. "Any attempt to board this vessel will be considered an act of war against Earth." The Zephyrian leader's expression didn't change, but Kim could see the calculation in those alien eyes. Krixtal was weighing the potential consequences of his actions against the intelligence value of capturing human technology and testing Earth's willingness to back up their threats. "Your doctrine has no authority in neutral space, human," Krixtal replied. "And I seriously doubt that your government will start a war over one patrol ship." Kim knew that this was the critical moment. How he responded would determine not just the fate of his crew, but potentially the future relationship between humanity and the rest of the galactic community. If he backed down, it would show that Earth's threats were empty. If he resisted, it might start exactly the kind of conflict that everyone wanted to avoid. "Chief Yoon, prepare the emergency beacon," Kim ordered quietly. Yoon's fingers flew over her console as she activated one of the most closely guarded pieces of technology in the Earth fleet. The emergency beacon was a hyperspace transmitter that could reach any human vessel within 50 light years and alert them to a crisis situation. More importantly, it would automatically transmit the ship's sensor logs and communication records to Earth Fleet Command. "Beacon ready, Captain," Yoon reported. Kim took a deep breath and looked directly into the camera that was transmitting his image to the Zephyrian flagship. "War Marshal Krixtal, this is your final warning. Any aggressive action against this Vessel will result in immediate retaliation by Earth fleet forces. We do not bluff and we do not negotiate with those who violate galactic law. For a moment, Kim thought the Zephyrian leader might reconsider his course of action. The alien's massive form seemed to hesitate as he weighed the potential risks. But then Krixtal's compound eyes hardened with resolve, and Kim knew that diplomacy had failed. "Fire warning shots," Krixtal ordered his gunners. "Then deploy boarding pods." The space around the Busan Guardian erupted with weapons fire as the Zephyrian cruisers opened up with their secondary batteries. The shots were deliberately aimed to miss, but they served their purpose of demonstrating the aliens' overwhelming firepower. Kim's ship shuddered as several near misses sent electromagnetic pulses through her hull. "Activate the beacon," Kim ordered. Tatatug. Emergency signal burst out from the Busan Guardian at faster-than-light speed, carrying with it a simple message that would change the course of galactic history. Kim knew that every human vessel within range would receive the transmission within hours, and that Earth Fleet Command would have the full record of what was happening here. The main screen showed dozens of small craft launching from the Zephyrian, cruisers and heading toward Kim's ship. The boarding pods were heavily armored and designed to cut through a ship's hull to deliver assault troops directly to key areas. Once they attached, it would be almost impossible to remove them without destroying his own vessel. Fleet Admiral Han Jisoo stood in the command center of Titan Base and watched as her staff coordinated the largest military mobilization in human history. The emergency beacon from Captain Kim's ship had reached Earth Fleet Command 18 hours ago, and the response had been immediate and overwhelming. Han had been called back from retirement to lead what military planners were already calling Operation Steel Thunder. The massive holographic display at the center of the command room showed the deployment of forces that would have shocked every other species in the galaxy. What the aliens had assumed was Earth's entire fleet had actually been less than 20% of humanity's true naval capacity. The reserve fleets that were now emerging from hidden bases throughout the solar system represented decades of secret construction and preparation. Captain Shin Woojin approached Han's position with a tablet containing the latest intelligence reports. Shin commanded the elite boarding specialists who would be responsible for retaking any human vessels that had been captured by alien forces. He was one of the finest soldiers Han had ever worked with, and his teams had proven their effectiveness during the recent conflicts with pirate forces in the outer systems. "Admiral, we have confirmation that the Busan Guardian has been taken," Shin reported grimly. "Long-range sensors show the ship under Zephyrian control but still intact. Captain Kim managed to activate the ship's lockdown protocols before they overwhelmed his crew." Han nodded as she studied the tactical display. Kim's actions had prevented the aliens from accessing critical Earth fleet technology, but his crew was now either dead or captured. The young captain had followed his orders perfectly, but the cost had been high. That cost would be repaid with interest. "What's the status of our response fleets?" Han asked. Dr. Song Nari looked up from her position at a nearby console where she was coordinating the deployment of humanity's most advanced warships. Song was the lead scientist on several classified weapons projects, and her innovations had given Earth fleet capabilities that no other species possessed. Her work on adaptive armor systems and multidimensional targeting had revolutionized space combat. The Terra Invicta is ready for deployment along with Battle Group 7 through 19, Song reported. The new Fortress-class vessels are performing beyond specifications and should give us a significant advantage in any large-scale engagement. Han walked to the main viewing port and looked out at the massive ship that would serve as her flagship for this operation. The Terra Invicta was 3 times larger than any vessel previously seen in galactic space and represented the culmination of 50 years of human military development. Her hull gleamed with the distinctive blue-gray coating that marked Earth's newest generation of warships. Behind the flagship, hundreds of other vessels were taking their positions in the vast formation that would carry humanity's answer to the Zephyrian aggression. Heavy cruisers, battleships, carriers, and support vessels stretched as far as the eye could see. Each ship represented thousands of hours of construction time and billions of credits in advanced technology. The communication board lit up with an incoming transmission from Earth Fleet Command, and Han recognized the voice of Admiral Lee Jinho, even before his image appeared on the screen. Lee was currently at Kepler Prime Station, attempting to manage the political fallout from the Zephyrian attack, while Han prepared the military response. Admiral Han, the Galactic Council is in emergency session, Lee reported. Several species are demanding that Earth show restraint and pursue diplomatic solutions. The insectoid hive has publicly declared their support for the Zephyrian actions. Han felt her jaw tighten at the news. War Marshal Krixtal had clearly planned this provocation carefully and secured backing from other military powers before acting. The insects had always resented humanity's rapid rise to prominence and saw this as an opportunity to reduce Earth's influence in galactic affairs. "What's our timeline for political action?" Han asked. Lee's expression was grim as he delivered. The Council's response to Earth's ultimatum. "The Council has given us 72 hours to withdraw our forces and accept a negotiated settlement. They're treating this as a minor border incident rather than a violation of established accords." "And our response?" "The same message we've been sending for 50 years, Lee replied firmly. "Earth does not negotiate with those who attack our people. We gave them 72 hours to withdraw their support from the Zephyrian hegemony or face the consequences of their choice." Han nodded and turned back to her staff officers, who were waiting for orders. The political maneuvering would continue, but her job was to ensure that Earth's military position was strong enough to back up whatever diplomatic stance their government chose to take. That meant being ready to fight and win a war against multiple alien powers. All fleet commanders. "This is Admiral Han," she announced over the fleet communication network. "Operation Steel Thunder is now active. All vessels will deploy according to previously established battle plans. Our objective is the complete neutralization of all hostile forces and the recovery of Earth Fleet personnel and equipment." The response was immediate as hundreds of ships began moving into their assigned positions. The formation that emerged was unlike anything that had ever been assembled in galactic space. Instead of the rigid battle lines favored by most species, the human fleet deployed in multiple independent groups that could operate across vast distances while maintaining coordination. Captain Park Minji's voice came over the communication channel from her position aboard the Soul's Pride. Park was leading the main assault force that would engage the Zephyrian home fleet, while other groups struck at their supply lines and support facilities. Her ship had been upgraded with the latest weapons systems and defensive technologies. "Admiral, the assault groups are in position and ready to begin the first phase of operations," Park reported. "Intelligence indicates that the Zephyrians have concentrated their main fleet around their homeworld in a defensive formation." Han studied the tactical projections that showed the enemy positions and dispositions. The Zephyrians were clearly expecting a traditional fleet engagement where superior numbers would decide the outcome. They had positioned their forces to take advantage of their quantitative superiority while protecting their most important installations. "They're thinking like the old galactic powers," Han observed to her staff. "Linear formations, predictable tactics, and rigid command structures. They have no idea what they're about to face." Dr. Song Nari highlighted several areas on the tactical display where human forces would have significant advantages. "The adaptive targeting systems should allow our ships to coordinate attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously. The Zephyrians won't be able to respond fast enough to counter our strike patterns." Chief Engineer Yoon Hyeri had been rescued from the captured Busan Guardian during a lightning raid by Captain Shin's forces 12 hours earlier. Her first-hand knowledge of Zephyrian capabilities and weaknesses was proving invaluable for planning the assault. She was still recovering from her ordeal, but insisted on participating in the operation. "The aliens are overconfident," Yoon reported from her position at the intelligence station. They think their armor and shields are superior to human technology. They have no idea about the penetration capabilities of our new weapons systems. And Darba nodded as she finalized the attack plan. The Zephyrians had made a critical error in assuming that humanity would respond according to established galactic military doctrine. Instead, Earth's forces would demonstrate the tactical innovations that had made them the most feared military power in known space. The first phase of the assault began 6 hours later when Lieutenant Commander Choi Soon-ho led a squadron of modified fighters through the outer defenses of the Zephyrian home system. The young officer had volunteered for the most dangerous mission of the operation, using his ship's stealth capabilities to gather real-time intelligence on enemy positions. "Admiral, we have visual confirmation of the main Zephyrian fleet," Choi transmitted from his position deep in enemy space. "They're arranged in the standard defensive shell formation around their homeworld. I count at least 40 heavy cruisers and numerous support vessels." Han smiled grimly as she received the intelligence data. The Zephyrians had positioned their forces exactly as human tactical analysts had predicted. Their commanders were following military doctrine that was thousands of years old and completely unsuited for the kind of warfare that Earth's forces were about to unleash. "All assault groups commence operation," Han ordered. What followed would become known as the Battle of 7 Stars, as human forces struck simultaneously across 7 different star systems. Captain Park led the main assault against the Zephyrian homeworld, while other groups attacked supply depots, shipyards, and communication centers. The aliens found themselves fighting multiple battles across vast distances, with no way to coordinate their responses. The Terra Invicta arrived at the edge of the Zephyrian home system like an avenging angel, her massive bulk bristling with weapons that no alien species had ever seen before. The Fortress-class vessel could function as a mobile command center, coordinating attacks across light years of space while bringing enormous firepower to bear against enemy positions. The Battle of Crimson Gate began at dawn on the second day of what historians would later call the 72-hour war. Lieutenant Commander Choi Soon-ho led his fighter squadron through the massive space station that controlled access to the insectoid hive's core systems, his modified ships darting between the geometric structures that the insects used for their military installations. The hive had responded to Admiral Han's ultimatum by launching a massive counterattack against human positions throughout the galaxy. Their strategy was simple but effective. Use their numerical superiority to overwhelm Earth's forces before humanity could bring their full strength to bear. What the insects hadn't anticipated was the speed and coordination of the human response. Choi's fighters were part of a 3-pronged assault designed to cripple the hive's command and control capabilities, while larger human forces engaged their main fleets. The young officer had proven himself during the initial attacks on Zephyrian positions, and Admiral Han had personally selected him to lead this critical mission. "Wolfpack, this is Wolf Leader," Choi transmitted to his squadron. "Primary target is the Central Command Node. Secondary targets are the communication arrays. Remember, we need to disable their coordination capabilities before the main fleet arrives." The Crimson Gate station was a marvel of insectoid engineering, with interconnected, hexagonal modules that could be reconfigured based on tactical requirements. Each section bristled with defensive weapons and fighter bays that could launch thousands of small craft to defend the installation. The hive's military doctrine emphasized overwhelming numbers and coordinated swarm tactics. Choi's squadron consisted of only 12 ships, but each one had been modified with technology that gave them capabilities far beyond their apparent size. The fighters were equipped with adaptive armor that could deflect most energy weapons and stealth systems that made them nearly invisible to standard sensors. More importantly, they carried the new quantum torpedoes that Dr. Song Nari had developed, specifically for this operation. The first wave of hive defenders emerged from the station's launch bays like an angry swarm of metal insects. Hundreds of small fighters moved in perfect coordination, their pilots linked through biological communication systems that allowed them to function as a single organism. The display was both beautiful and terrifying as the alien craft moved, with inhuman precision. "Evasive pattern Delta," Choi ordered as enemy fire began filling the space around his squadron. "Don't let them surround us." The human fighters scattered and began using their superior maneuverability to stay ahead of the hive swarm. Choi had studied the insects' tactical patterns extensively and knew that their strength lay in coordinated group attacks. By refusing to engage in a direct confrontation, his squadron could force the enemy to break their formation and fight as individuals. The battle raged for nearly an hour as Choi's fighters played a deadly game of cat and mouse with the hive defenders. The young commander used every trick he had learned during his years of training, leading the enemy through asteroid fields and around the station's defensive structures. Gradually, the superior human technology began to tell as one by one the hive fighters were eliminated. "Wolf Leader, this is Control." Admiral Han's voice came through on the command frequency. "Main fleet engagement has begun. You need to complete your mission and withdraw before enemy reinforcements arrive." Choi acknowledged the order and led his remaining fighters toward the station's central command module. The quantum torpedoes were designed to disrupt the biological communication networks that the hive used to coordinate their forces. If the weapons worked as designed, they would effectively blind the enemy fleet just as Captain Park's assault force arrived. The approach to the command module was defended by the station's heaviest weapons, including plasma cannons that could vaporize a fighter with a single hit. Choi watched two of his pilots disappear in brilliant flashes of light as they pushed through the defensive fire. The cost was high, but the mission was too important to abandon. "Torpedoes away," Choi announced, as his remaining fighters launched their special weapons. "All ships, emergency withdrawal." The quantum torpedoes struck the command module and disappeared into its structure without any visible explosion. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen, and Choi wondered if the weapons had malfunctioned. Then the entire station began to convulse, as its communication systems collapsed and the perfect coordination of the hive forces dissolved into chaos. Thousands of miles away, Captain Park Minji was leading the main assault against the insectoid hive's primary fleet. The Soul's Pride had been upgraded with the latest human technology and served as the flagship for Battle Group 7. Park had been fighting for 36 hours straight, but showed no signs of fatigue as she commanded her forces in the largest space battle in galactic history. The hive fleet was enormous, consisting of over 300 capital ships and countless smaller vessels. Their ships were grown rather than built, with organic hulls that could adapt to damage and repair themselves during combat. The aliens had evolved their technology over millions of years, and their vessels represented the pinnacle of biological engineering. "Enemy fleet is maintaining defensive formation around their homeworld," reported the Soul's Pride's tactical officer. "They're using the planet's gravity well to anchor their position and force us to attack through their prepared defenses." Park studied the tactical display and smiled grimly at what she saw. The hive commanders were thinking like insects, relying on the collective strength of their swarm to overwhelm any attacker. They had no concept of the fluid tactics that humans had developed or the technological advantages that Earth's forces possessed. "All ships implement the Jinho maneuver," Park ordered, naming the tactic after Admiral Lee, who had first developed it during the border conflicts. "We're going to expand the battlefield." What followed defied every principle of space combat that the galactic community had established over thousands of years. Instead of concentrating their forces for a direct assault, the human fleet scattered across multiple star systems and began launching coordinated attacks from dozens of different vectors. Chief Engineer Yoon Hyeri had been working around the clock to modify the Soul's Pride's command systems for this new type of warfare. Her innovations allowed the flagship to coordinate attacks across light years of space in real time, effectively turning the entire human fleet into a single weapon system. Quantum communication links are stable, Yoon reported from her position at the engineering station. All battle groups are reporting ready status. The Soul's Pride had become the center of a web of information that connected every human vessel in the operation. Park could see the positions and status of ships across 17 different star systems and coordinate their movements with precision that no other species could match. The Hive fleet found itself under attack from every direction as human forces struck at their supply lines, reinforcement routes, and support facilities simultaneously. Their commanders tried to respond, but the collapse of their communication systems had left them blind and unable to coordinate defensive efforts. Captain Shin Woo-jin led the boarding operations that became the most brutal aspect of the entire war. His specialized assault troops were equipped with powered armor and weapons designed specifically for fighting in the confined spaces of enemy vessels. The battles that raged through alien ship corridors were vicious and unforgiving. The Hive vessels were particularly challenging targets because their organic nature meant that conventional weapons had limited effectiveness. Shin's troops had to adapt their tactics constantly as they fought through ships that could literally reshape themselves to trap or confuse invaders. "Target the nerve centers," Shin ordered his squad leaders as they breached another enemy vessel. "Cut the biological connections and the ship systems will collapse." The boarding actions were successful but costly as human soldiers fought against aliens who were defending their homes with desperate courage. The insects were individually weaker than humans, but their coordination and willingness to sacrifice themselves made them dangerous opponents in close combat. Dr. Song Nari monitored the performance of her new weapon systems from her position aboard the Terra Invicta. The quantum torpedoes, adaptive armor, and multi-dimensional targeting systems were all performing beyond expectations and giving human forces decisive advantages in every engagement. "Admiral, the new penetrator warheads are achieving 97% effectiveness against Hive organic armor," Song reported to Admiral Han. "Enemy casualties are mounting faster than their regeneration capabilities can compensate." Han nodded as she watched the tactical displays that showed human forces systematically dismantling two of the galaxy's most powerful military forces. The Zephyrian hegemony had already surrendered after losing their main fleet, and the insectoid hive was clearly approaching the breaking point. The decisive moment came when Captain Park's forces broke through the hive's defensive perimeter and began targeting their homeworld's orbital installations. The aliens had built massive biological structures in orbit around their planet to serve as shipyards and command centers. The destruction of these facilities would cripple their ability to continue the war. Fleet Admiral Han Ji-soo stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council wearing her dress uniform with the new decorations that marked her victory in the 72-hour war. The council chamber at Kepler Prime Station had been rebuilt since the conflict, with additional security measures and communication systems that reflected the new reality of galactic politics. Every species in the chamber understood that they were witnessing the emergence of a new dominant power. The war had ended not with negotiated surrender, but with the complete collapse of organized resistance from both the Zephyrian hegemony and the insectoid hive. Their governments had formally dissolved themselves rather than face continued destruction, and their surviving military forces had submitted to Earth Fleet authority. The speed and decisiveness of the human victory had shocked every observer and forced a complete re-evaluation of the galactic balance of power. High Arbiter Velthar's crystalline form pulsed with subdued colors as the ancient being called the emergency session to order. The crystalline collective had remained neutral during the brief conflict, but even they had been surprised by the extent of human military capabilities. The revelation that Earth's previously known fleet had represented less than 15% of their actual forces had sent shockwaves through every government in known space. "We convene today to address the new realities that have emerged from recent conflicts," Velthar announced. "The actions of the past week have demonstrated that our previous understanding of military capabilities and political relationships was fundamentally flawed. Ambassador Ko Dong-yun sat in the human delegation section alongside Admiral Lee Jin-ho, who had been recalled from his diplomatic duties to serve as military advisor during the transition period. Both men wore expressions of calm professionalism that masked the satisfaction they felt at seeing their longtime opponents humbled by superior human strategy and technology. Fleet Commander Noxera of the Energy Collective leaned forward in their containment field, the ancient being's patterns shifting with what might have been amusement. "I have observed the rise and fall of many civilizations over the millennia," the energy being said in their voice like distant thunder. "Those who survive learn to respect strength while avoiding unnecessary conflict. The humans have demonstrated both qualities in abundance." Admiral Han stepped forward to address the assembly, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's enhanced communication systems. She had spent 3 days preparing this speech with Earth's best political analysts and military strategists, knowing that her words would shape galactic politics for generations to come. "Representatives of the Galactic Council," Han began. "The recent conflict was neither sought nor desired by Earth. We established the Terran Naval Doctrine 2 years ago as a warning, not a threat. We hoped it would never be tested. We prepared for the day it would be." A ripple of tension passed through the chamber as delegates realized that Han was essentially confirming what many had suspected, that humanity had been preparing for galactic-scale warfare since their first contact with alien civilizations. The revelation that Earth's military preparations had been so extensive and so secret disturbed many species who had thought they understood human capabilities. "The Zephyrian hegemony and insectoid hive chose to test our resolve," Han continued. "They believed that our reputation was built on technological superiority and favorable circumstances. They failed to understand that it was built on something far more fundamental: the absolute determination to protect human lives and interests, regardless of the cost." Captain Kim Tae-hyun sat in the front row of the human section, still recovering from his wounds but insisting on attending this historic session. His sacrifice aboard the Busan Guardian had provided the justification for Earth's overwhelming response, and his heroism had become a symbol of human determination throughout the fleet. Dr. Song Nari was also present, her scientific innovations having played a crucial role in the rapid victory. The quantum torpedoes, adaptive armor systems, and multidimensional targeting technologies she had developed had given human forces decisive advantages in every engagement. Her work would continue to shape military technology for years to come. The old galactic order was based on the assumption that no single species could dominate space through military force alone, Han stated. Recent events have proven that assumption incorrect. Earth now possesses the capability to impose our will throughout known space, but we choose not to exercise that capability without just cause. The delegates stirred uneasily at the implied threat in Han's words. The Admiral was making it clear that humanity could conquer the entire galaxy if they chose to do so, but was offering to show restraint in exchange for cooperation. It was both a generous offer and a subtle intimidation tactic. War Marshal Krixtall was notably absent from the Zephyrian delegation, having been killed during the final assault on his flagship. The remaining Zephyrian representatives looked defeated and humiliated as they contemplated the complete destruction of their military power and the occupation of their homeworld by human forces. Captain Park Min-ji had been promoted to Admiral, following her outstanding performance during the conflict, and now commanded the new Galactic Patrol Force from her flagship Soul's Pride. Her tactical innovations had proven decisive in multiple engagements and established her as one of Earth's most promising military leaders. Earth proposes a new framework for galactic security, Han announced, as holographic displays throughout the chamber showed the details of humanity's plan. We will assume primary responsibility for maintaining peace and stability throughout known space, In return, all member species will acknowledge Earth's authority in military matters and register their armed forces with our command structure. The proposal was breathtaking in its scope and audacity. Han was essentially asking every species in the galaxy to subordinate their military forces to human authority while accepting Earth as the dominant power in galactic affairs. It was the kind of arrangement that would have been unthinkable before the recent demonstration of human capabilities. Ambassador, Ko stood to present the detailed terms of what would become known as the new Galactic Compact. His diplomatic skills had been crucial in building support for Earth's position among the neutral species, and his calm presentation style helped make the radical proposals seem reasonable and necessary. The compact establishes several key principles. Ko explained. First, Earth fleet vessels maintain absolute sovereignty in all space lanes and may not be interfered with under any circumstances. Second, all military conflicts between member species must be submitted to Earth Fleet Command for resolution. Third, any species that engages in aggressive action against another member will face immediate intervention by human forces. Chief Engineer Yoon Hyeri had been promoted to head of Fleet Technical Development following her heroic actions during the war. Her modifications to human ships had proven crucial in multiple engagements, and her continued innovations would ensure that Earth maintained its technological advantages over potential enemies. Lieutenant Commander Choi Sun-ho, now promoted to captain, had become something of a celebrity following his successful mission against the Crimson Gate station. His tactics during that engagement had become required study material at military academies throughout human space, and his squadron had been awarded Earth's highest combat decorations. The debate that followed Ko's presentation lasted for hours, as various delegations struggled to come to terms with the new reality. Some species argued for modifications to the proposed terms, while others questioned whether any single power should have such extensive authority. The discussions were heated but civilized, with all participants aware that rejecting Earth's proposals would likely result in their enforcement through military action. Fleet Commander Noxara finally broke the deadlock by expressing the Energy Collective's support for the compact. The humans have demonstrated both the capability and the restraint necessary for galactic leadership, the ancient being observed. Their victory was overwhelming, but they chose to limit the destruction to military targets. This suggests wisdom as well as strength. One by one, the other major powers added their support to the proposal. The Crystalline Collective, Thermal Union, and dozens of smaller species formally accepted Earth's terms and agreed to the establishment of the new order. The few holdouts found themselves isolated and eventually capitulated rather than face the prospect of confronting human military power alone. The signing ceremony took place 3 days later with representatives from every species in the galaxy participating. Admiral Han signed the document on behalf of Earth, while High Arbiter Velthar added the formal seal of the Galactic Council. The moment marked the end of the old chaotic system of competing powers and the beginning of humanity's galactic empire. Captain Shin Woo-jin had been placed in charge of the new Rapid Response Division, an elite force designed to intervene quickly in any situation that threatened galactic stability. His boarding specialists had become the stuff of legend following their performance during the war, and their reputation alone was often enough to deter potential troublemakers. 5 years later,